mental illness and mental health. And I wanted to do a video today because I just felt very led to say something about what's been going on in the United States. And what brought this about, as many people are aware of and as many people know, are the deaths of Kate Spade and now Anthony Bourdain. And these were celebrities. People celebrated them. People knew them. People thought that they led charmed lives, and yet they ended their lives. And I've been seeing a lot of articles pop up, especially today with this second suicide, regarding why is suicide on the rise in the United States, particularly among middle-aged people between the ages of 45 and 60. Why is this happening? And there was an article by CBS News that talked about harder financial situations. It's harder for us than our parents' generation to find financial stability, to get a good paying job, to pay off student debts, credit card debt, and physical illnesses was another one, chronic conditions that cause a lot of suffering. And another one was relationship problems. And there were a lot of reasons listed. And I think that those might be the actual reasons why some people do commit suicide, but it's just, I don't think that those reasons are getting to the real root of why people continue to end their lives. And I want to read something that I posted on Facebook today. And this is not the gospel. This is not the be-all, end-all. I get that there's a lot of reasons why people commit suicide, and that, you know, those reasons are some of the real reasons. And sometimes it's just that people are in so much emotional pain that they don't know where to put it, even when they're getting help, even when they're talking to people, that sometimes it's just too much and it won't go away. And they end up taking their own life. But I believe that there is a reason that is more prominent, and nobody's talking about it. A few people are. People like Pema Chodron and people like, for example, the work of Brene Brown. They're talking about the root of it, and most people are not talking about this. I believe those people are on the cutting edge of the roots of suicide and depression in many cases. Like I said, I'm not saying this is the only contributing factor. I'm not saying it's the only cause. And I'm not saying that this is the case for everybody, but I'm saying that it is one of the major causes, and people are looking at the surface level symptoms. Committing suicide because you lose your job is not the reason you committed suicide. There's something deeper. You don't just go and kill yourself because you lose a job. It's devastating. It's depressing. You don't just go and commit suicide because you get a divorce. If there's something inside of you that's more stable than that, then even though we all go through these tough times and we weather these times and they're difficult, people don't just go and kill themselves unless there was something going on to begin with. And so I wanted to read something that I wrote this morning in response to waking up this morning and seeing a big red headline by CNN saying Anthony Bourdain dead at age so-and-so of suicide. And I'm like, what the hell? This guy he's an amazing world traveling person who seems like he lives the most fulfilled life. I want to travel the world. He's doing what I want to do. He's doing what so many of us want to do. What would make him want to commit suicide? Kate Spade is financially sound. She's got a loving family. She's got a beautiful child, and she does what she dreams of for a living, and most people never get to do that. And yet there are so many people who sweep streets and bag garbage and teach school and are doctors, and they're doing those jobs because they feel like they don't have another choice for whatever reason, whether it's the highest position or the lowest position. There is something deeper. What you do for a living, whether you're married or not, how much money you have, those things can contribute to stress, yes, but they do not cause suicide. So I want to read what I wrote, and this is just my opinion, and it's just one point of view on the topic, but I wanted to get it out there, and I wanted to see what you thought. I want to see what people think. We need to have a dialogue about mental illness in this country. And a lot of people are talking about it, but there's still a lot of people sticking their heads in the sand. And a lot of it are people that don't acknowledge the mental illness that's in their own family. They don't acknowledge the shame that they feel. And I think to one degree or the other, we're all broken. And we're all hurting. And people are scared to talk about it. So let me read my post now and then go from there. Suicide is on the rise in the U.S., and Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain are just two famous examples of that. The question we should be asking ourselves is why? As someone who's been in a place, I can tell you that it's shame. It's the thing no one wants to talk about, confront, or acknowledge. Excuse me, get my gum out of my mouth. My apologies. It's the root of much addiction, abuse, and mental illness. Shame, one way or another, is the root of many suicides. People feel such an intense despair, but if they reach out to someone, they can get help. They can get a shoulder to cry on, someone to tell them it's going to get better, someone to tell them there's not something fundamentally wrong with them. That's what shame is. However, shame and fear of what people think prevents many people from reaching out and getting help. Shame is self-maintaining. It's a black hole. Guilt says, I did something wrong. That's healthy. Shame is, I am wrong. I am wrong for being here. I'm wrong for existing. I'm worthless. I'm deficient. I believed that about myself about 40 years of my life because it was drilled intensely into my head for the first 20 years of my life. Because every single day, that's what I was told without relent. But when someone reaches out for help and gets some perspective, they get help, and they aren't alone and groundless in unbearable suffering, then there's hope. There's hope. Some people see depression and other mental illness as a weakness, and they don't want anyone to know about their condition. Why is it a weakness? Did they cause it? Are they not a human being worthy of love? Is there not a soul beneath all of that, just like yours or mine? Shame. Why is depression seen as a weakness? Most people who suffer from depression are freaking warriors. They use an act of will to get out of bed every day, do what everyone else does, while carrying a boulder on their shoulders within their soul, and while acting like everything is okay. Everything is great. How are you, Rachel? I'm fine. How are you? How are you doing today? I'm great. How about you? Imagine if your mom died, heaven forbid, and someone told you that if you told anyone she had died or showed any emotion about it whatsoever, they would kill you, and that you would go to work the next day and you have to act like everything is normal. And the day after that, and the day after that, and every day for the rest of your ever-loving life. Now, that's a silly comparison. It sounds dramatic, but that's what people with shame about their depression experience every single day. And it's not a wonder it leads to suicide as it all builds up inside. And then one day, it's just too much and they can't carry it anymore. The shame forces them to confront it because it's absolutely intolerable. And even though people love them, their distorted thinking tells them no one cares if they die tomorrow. No one would care. It's not the truth, but it's the lie that shame tells us. Imagine that person that threatened you being in your head every single day. No one is in that position because they choose to be. No one in that position wants pity. They just want people to understand what they're experiencing. Not because they're more concerned about keeping a job, keeping their reputation, or keeping their career. And when people are more concerned about that, they keep it inside. They stuff it. They shove it. Sometimes they even do that with their own family, and their own family knows something is off and something is wrong, but that is all they know. And it's because of shame. And if someone decides to reach out and get help, it feels like standing naked in front of the whole world. They use every ounce of courage they have to share their story and experience. They know people judge them. They often reach out for help in their weakest moments and are ignored or blown off. I had that happen recently. I reached out to someone that I thought was absolutely wonderful and compassionate, and I shared my heart, I shared my story, and I got very little. But what I had to understand was that I can't, everybody makes their own choices. But yeah, it hurt. Yeah, ouch, it hurt. So I got back up, and a lot of people do this every day. They get back up on their own with no help, like they always do. And while mental illness should not be worn like a badge of courage, it shouldn't be used as a way to get attention and to get people to feel sorry for you. Every time somebody reaches out for help, that's not what they're doing. They are really hurting most of the time. So when they get back up on their own with no help, they do it because they will themselves to do it. While mental illness, like I said, should not be worn like a badge of courage, we have to look at the roots of shame. I've been experiencing intense shame for the past couple of weeks, to the point that it crippled me for a little while. And this happened to me a couple of weeks ago, and it came from the past, but it was triggered by something that's so seemingly inconsequential. And it was so overpowering that it just racks your body like it's overwhelming. You're frozen. The best word I can use for it is paralyzing. Shame is paralyzing. And it's amazing how a few unkind words can do that. Just taking a little time, though, to talk to someone, to treat someone with a bit of dignity, or to say a kind word can be life or death for someone else, as crazy as it sounds. And to notice if something is off with someone and to find out if they're okay can change somebody's life. To show them that you care and respond when they reach out can make all the difference. Don't just say, I'll pray for you. Say, is there anything I can do? Don't tell them how to live their life, but if you can give them a bit of counsel in terms of they're okay, there's nothing wrong with them, don't tell them how to feel. Don't tell them that what they're going through is imaginary. Don't invalidate their feelings. Be with them. Validate them. Be a witness to them. That's where healing occurs. Not pushing it down. To show you care and respond when they reach out can make all the difference. I'm not talking about walking on eggshells here, people, but just having the extra level of mindfulness and awareness of the people around us. And that their dark abyss of suffering is perception, not reality. But that does not mean that it's not real and valid to them. It's still real and it's still valid, even if it's distorted from the outside world. Most people don't have the courage to face their demons. And I've been doing that for the last 6 months, and let me tell you, it is not for the faint of heart. But I am going to come out on the other side of the tunnel and see the light. And I will not give up, and I will not stop until I do. Some of us, the reason, though, that people are ashamed, most people don't have the courage to face their demons and the darkness within them. It's because of their own shame. The shame is what's unbearable. We all have it. Some of us have it more than others for various reasons, but all humans have shame. Everybody. It's inbuilt into us. And we picked some up along the way when we had incidents in our childhood, incidents at school, incidents on a job, broken relationships, rejection in a social setting, losing a job, divorce. There are so many reasons that people experience shame, and we've all been in a situation that made us feel shame. But we need to talk about it. We need to talk about mental illness. We need to talk about shame. We need to talk about depression. We need to talk about suicide. We need to stop losing people because they're afraid to reach out. We need to stop portraying fake, perfect lives on Facebook that aren't real and actually contribute to the suffering of others. People will say, if you have someone on Facebook and they look like they have money and they're gorgeous and they're virtuous and they have a great job and they're married to a millionaire and they've got cute kids that go to private school and they're active in their church and everybody just worships them and talks about how great their life is and how much they admire them. And people think that if somebody reacts to that Facebook image or facade, that the person reacting is the problem. And I would argue that yes, that person should focus on their own life and realize that that's fake. It's not real. It is fake. Nobody's life is really like that. Everybody has had job loss. They've had bugs in their house. Their poop stinks. They cry when something doesn't go their way. They feel jealous of people. They have boogers and warts and poop and farts and everything else just like anybody else. But they show that side of themselves, and it is only one side of their life. It is the absolute top 1%. And I would argue that people who portray their lives that way, I don't mean just people who are positive and people who have good lives. I mean people that's all they show. That, I believe, is damaging to other people that have distorted thoughts for whatever reason. They are suffering and they go through their Facebook feed and it just makes them feel worse. And they go into the comparison game and they feel intense shame and it just intensifies their suffering. And I think we need to start being real and we need to put our best foot forward, but we also need to show that we're human and that we're not perfect. And we need to start being vulnerable and being vulnerable to each other. So let me read the last paragraph. We need to talk about it. We need to stop losing people because they're afraid to reach out. We need to stop portraying fake, perfect lives on Facebook that aren't real and actually contribute to the suffering of others. I know some would disagree with me on that, but that's just my opinion. We need to be kind and notice when someone is suffering. We need to talk about shame and depression and mental illness and make it the norm that it's okay to not be perfect and that reaching out is the first step to healing. We need to start perceiving mental illness like we do physical illness. If you had seizures and weak spells, you would go to the doctor. She would give you insulin and tell you that you have diabetes and you need to change your lifestyle. It would just be frank, honest, and straightforward, and that's that. Your friends would not tell you to get over your diabetes and your diabetes will go away. And if you told your boss that you had diabetes and you needed to monitor certain things on the job, he wouldn't suddenly tell you that, you're fired. Or he wouldn't suddenly lose respect for you and then come up with an excuse to fire you. In our culture, we have a policy that people with mental illnesses and disabilities are not allowed to lose their jobs and be discriminated against because of their mental health status as long as they're doing their job. Well, let me tell you, that is a bunch of BS because those laws are not enforced. I know dozens of people who have their boss, they would think that they could trust their boss with their condition. They were very, very hesitant to share it, to show any side like that, and they finally let their guard down and said, well, I'm protected by the American Disabilities Act. And they took their situation to their boss because they felt like it would make their lives easier and allow them to get some reasonable accommodation while they did their job. And in so many cases, I know that they were turned down for a promotion that they would have otherwise gotten, and or their boss found an excuse. Obviously, it wasn't a mental illness thing, but it's funny how they worked there for 10, 12, 15, 20 years, and then after that, their boss found a reason to fire them or found a reason to demote them. And that happens every day. And that is why people are scared to talk about mental illness, because they're scared they're going to get fired, lose their respect, or even lose their job or their business. But with mental illness, it's that way every day for people who suffer. And those fears are what cause people to keep it inside and ultimately end their lives. There's somebody in my life that I love that won't get help for that very reason. And they will probably die miserable, as sad and frank as it sounds, because they are ashamed and they are afraid to get help for that reason. And to me, I would rather destroy my financial and my professional prospects and get help and be mentally sound. And I don't think it's an either or thing. That's why we need to change the paradigm. The suffering may be worse for those with physical disease though, but with mental illness, it's that way every day. And those fears are what cause people to keep it inside and ultimately end their lives. That's how people with mental illness are treated. And the suffering may be worse than most physical diseases, and it's just as real. People shouldn't be afraid they'll lose a job or reputation or business because of their mental health status. People shouldn't have to worry that their family and friends won't believe them. Until we talk about it and change the paradigm about how mental illness is treated and perceived in this country, until we make mental health a priority, Until we look at the real reasons for mental illness, it's not because somebody lost their job. It's not because somebody got a divorce. It's the shame that comes out of that experience. That's what causes them to lose their battle. It's the shame. Until we talk about it and change the paradigm about how mental illness is treated and perceived, and until we stop portraying ourselves as perfect on social media so people will like us, and that ain't even the real us, people will take their lives because they'll keep their pain inside and their shame inside. So we need to talk about it, because if you deal with this every day, you are not weak. You are awesome, and you are a warrior. So keep talking, keep reaching out, keep changing the paradigm, and keep up the fight. Keep the faith. Notice people around you, pay attention to them, show care, show compassion. Don't pity them, but respect and honor what they're going through and who they are outside of that, because their suffering, their shame, their depression, their anxiety, their bipolar disorder, they're none of those things. They are themselves. They are a soul made by God, and their worth is not in that. Their worth is simply because they were created and they're here. We need to talk about shame.